Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining in for this session on how do you go about setting up growth marketing teams. My name is Devas Ravichandran. I work with Freshworks. I used to lead marketing for a particular product within Freshworks. After that, now I lead the partnerships, startup program partnerships for Freshworks. And I have with me Ashwin from MoEngage. He is the VP of Marketing at MoEngage, and Neha, who is the head of marketing at Esper. So we're going to keep it super casual and conversational, and we'll try taking questions even in the middle of the session as we have it. I think we've had enough of these webinars happening throughout the year, so I think we'll keep it as fun as we can. And thanks for taking your time to joining us. Hey Ashwin, hey Neha, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Neha. Glad to be here. Yeah, like you said, hopefully we'll have some fun, and hopefully we'll also get to learn something.
Sure.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Neha, and like he said, I'm from Esper. I had the marketing team here. I previously worked with Google, InMobi, and another tech startup called Locus, and I'm a mother to a hyperactive 7-year-old. So I've been working on building marketing teams with tech-enabled startups, and with both Locus as well as Esper, I was the first person in the marketing team. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Excited.
Right. So just setting some context, right? I thought we will probably dive into something very fundamental, or maybe because there's also been a lot of this thing around. Hey, what is growth marketing? I mean, marketing is supposed to drive leads, or it's supposed to be bringing leads or bringing revenue to the company. But what is growth marketing, especially from a SaaS perspective? Ashwin, I'll start off with you. Just want to understand, how do you define growth marketing?
I think at the stage and the space where MoEngage is in, all marketing is growth marketing for us.
Yeah.
So we don't really have a separate growth marketing function as such.
Right.
To give you a bit of context, so MoEngage is in an enterprise SaaS space, right? So we are not in the SaaS space where we sort of sell a $50 or $100 sort of a month software where people can come in, buy through their credit cards, and they onboard. There's an automatic onboarding mechanism, and they sort of go through the life cycle with very little human intervention, right? So we are not in that model. We sell a fairly enterprise SaaS product, a customer engagement product for consumer brands, and the way customers buy from us is this very sort of a lengthy sales cycle with a lot of people involved and all of that, right? Which means there's a lot of human touch points. So for us, we don't really have a separate growth marketing function, and at the scale we are in also, it doesn't make sense to have a separate growth marketing function, right? I mean, we are not in the scale of a Freshworks where we have multiple product lines, and we're trying to sort of automate the entire customer journey from acquisition to retention to everything, right? So there's a lot of human touch points in this. So for us, all marketing is growth marketing. So I think really when you're talking about growth marketing, I think it depends on those two factors, right? So what sort of space are you in? Whether it's sort of enterprise SaaS or whether it's sort of your self-serve SaaS sort of a model, and how do customers like to buy from you? What is their journey? And the maturity of your organization, because that also helps you determine what does growth mean for you. For us, growth obviously means revenue, which means the entire marketing team is sort of measured as close to revenue as possible. So we are not measured on leads, we are measured on pipeline contribution, pipeline influence, which means all of us are geared towards growth, right? So the closer you are to sort of a revenue measurement, your marketing team becomes growth marketing team. Anyways. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how we are structured at MoEngage.
Okay. Neha, how does it structure at Esper?
So yeah, I totally agree with Ashwin. I also think that fundamentally that all marketing is about growth, right? Growth basically drives everything in this world, right? Startups that have a fast growth have a different sort of a DNA, from other businesses. For example, if you take Google, right? Google was not just any company whose founders were unusually lucky or hardworking. Google was different from the very beginning, right? And what I've also seen is, growth hacking is a term that is interchangeably used with growth marketing, right? But one thing that needs to be kept in mind is that there is no hacking involved in this sort of a method, right? There are no shortcuts. In fact, on the contrary, growth marketing actually focuses on, being more data driven and being extremely tactical and innovative, right? It's all about your entire customer life cycle, right? Not just fixating on one part of your funnel, especially like the top part of your funnel. So, yeah.
I think it's just being more measured rather than earlier. I think people were just spending or probably their efforts in multiple directions and were not really measuring it enough. I think when the term growth marketing kind of came in, there was more measurement and more data driven. I think Neha, you nailed it very well. That it's being done that way. So Ashwin and Neha, probably a question to both of you. What's the structure for the marketing team at MoEngage as well as Esper? Maybe we'll start with Neha first to understand how, like, what are the different elements, and maybe how did you even start off with it? Like, because you mentioned that, especially for early stage startups that are probably listening in today, what should they hire for first, or how should they go about it?
Yeah, so I think I would want to start off by saying that there is no perfect structure, right? Like there is no that one solution that fits all, right? It depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. Everything has its own pros and cons. The structure of your team basically depends on the size of your company, the budget that you actually have, or what are you hoping to achieve, right? What is your main goal? And ultimately, the goal is to define the problem based on, say, your insights or your hypothesis, and then you staff your team accordingly, right? What we did here was initially set that solid foundation where we did the entire basics of your one-on-one, right? Like of your one-on-one marketing. You have your PPC, you have your SEO person, you have your social media marketing people, and then we went ahead and sort of hired someone in growth marketing, right? And he was the one who actually came in and started looking at the existing processes and how we can actually find more opportunities in what we've already built. And apart from that, also sort of finding new opportunities and new channels to get more leads or whatever it is that we're trying to look at that point in time.
Right. And there's one question here, right? Like when you're hiring your first marketer, right? Like for a lot of the SaaS startups, what do you think they should look for?
So Ashwin, you want to take that?
Yeah. So I think if you're hiring your first marketer, don't hire a head of marketing. I mean, that would be my advice. I think there needs to be a distinction between how you look at the marketing function, right? Do you want marketing to amplify what you're doing, or do you want marketing to sort of help you discover your initial few customers, or to sort of help you discover the product market fit? And the kind of people you want to hire is going to be different for these two roles, right? When I came into MoEngage, the product market fit was already there, right? We were already doing a few $1 million in revenue ARR, right? So my job was more about amplification and building the structures and building a more predictable sort of an engine, which can really drive revenue growth, rather than trying to discover where my next set of 10 customers is going to come from, right? So I think you need to sort of differentiate between what stage you are in, and then make the decision of what sort of a marketing person you would hire. So if you are in a very early stage sort of a thing, and then if you're looking to really hire a marketing person, I think that person needs to be comfortable with chaos and trying to sort of be very experimentative in nature, and not really be hung up about what is my positioning, what is my messaging, what is my that. I mean, you're not looking at those frameworks. You're not looking at all of that, right? You'll probably have an SDR, you'll probably have a sales rep, and you'll probably have someone like a marketing person who's going to write some content, who's going to write some, who's sort of like a jack of all trades, who can write a bit of content, write a bit of landing pages, optimize some keywords, optimize for some PPCs and stuff like that. And then you're basically running a lot of experiments, right? I mean, and these experiments usually don't really have a structure to it. It's like, all right, this sounds cool, and let's just test it out. So if I were to sort of we're trying to make the first hire for a SaaS organization, I wouldn't be there in a very early stage organization to begin with, because I'm not that sort of a person who can sort of who can thrive in the chaos, right? So, but I would probably look at someone. I would probably suggest looking at sort of a jack of all trades sort of a person.
Like a full stack marketer of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I may not be full stack, but at least a little bit of digital knowledge, a little bit of content knowledge. May not be product marketing, may not be branding, may not be all of that. Just content a little bit, and the distribution muscle for the content, right? I mean, if you can sort of have that,
Right.
And then you have an SDR and an AE to sort of complement it. I think that's sort of your pod, and they can sort of figure things out.
Right.
More like an hustler, right? Like
Yeah.
you work with your front end team, you want to work with designers and everybody. So getting everybody together,
Right.
someone who can do that.
I think I get reminded of the statement where generally when you're hiring for the first marketer, you don't really hire from a large company because they're generally so used to working with so many resources and everything. They have like multiple people to do stuff. So they generally find it difficult. But Ashwin, today at Mo Engage, right? Like how is the team structured? Like who and all do you have in place? What are the different types of roles?
So the way we have structured the team, so there are two phases of Mo Engage's growth, right? When I joined, we were probably doing like I said, a few $1 million in revenue, and now, we are at a stage where we are adding few $1 million every year. And we are fairly global in terms of our customer base, right? So we have customers in Europe, we have customers in North America, etc. So we have sort of scaled, with 4x revenue in the last 2 years or so, 3 to 4x revenue in the last 2 years. So for what worked for the last 2 years may not necessarily work going forward. So I'll sort of split my answer into two portions, right? So when I joined in, literally there were, I think, 3 or 4 people in marketing. Out of those, I think 4 people, one was a developer and one was a designer. So literally 2 people, I think, or maybe 3. So the way we structured the team was to sort of build the basic, foundations for it, right? So one of the first hires I made was on the marketing ops side. Because, like Neha rightly mentioned, all marketing needs to be growth marketing. And for that, you need to be a lot more data driven. So one of the first, hires that we made was around marketing ops, where we said, look, we need somebody to sort of help make sure that these tools talk to each other, and, data from product is coming to this and data from here is going there, so that you sort of try to get a full understanding or a full visibility of the customer journey funnel, where are the leads going, where are the drop-offs and all of that. And then we started building the frameworks around it, right? So we started hiring for content. So I have a head of content and there's a few content people under her. And then we started building the distribution for the content, so which is your digital marketing function. So there's PPC, paid social, website, a couple of developers, designers, all of that. And then, of course, the marketing ops itself grew into a couple of more people that we have. And then there are a few product marketing people as well to sort of help us. Right now, product marketing is more sales enablement for us, to sort of help us with some of the product launches and also enable the inside sales and sales team. So that's really how the team is structured. Going forward, what we're trying to do is have a more sort of a regional, decentralized marketing team, because all of these people are in Bangalore. And we are having a decentralized marketing team. So we recently hired a marketing leader for North America, whose mandate is to look at North America. I'm also close to hiring someone in Europe whose mandate is to sort of look at Europe. And the central marketing function sort of starts becoming a more supporting, shared services sort of a thing, where they bring in certain expertise in, let's say, digital or content writing or sales and product marketing, whatever it is. And really the marketing strategy for each of these regions gets owned by the marketing leaders in these individual regions. So that's the way we are structuring the marketing team as we grow.
Right. Neha, so one question for you, right? Like you mentioned about, like in our previous conversation, you mentioned about deployments of your in multiple devices and all of these things, right? Like maybe, so one question around that was, there is some marketing which can be measured very, very well, right? Like when you're probably using all digital channels, you can look at conversions and all of that. There are some channels which cannot be measured as effectively, like especially like brand marketing, right? Like let's say if you go to an event or something of that sort, how is Esper tackling some of those things as in like an early stage or a mid stage startup, Neha?
So that is a very good question, right? How we are essentially looking at pretty much everything right now is based on the website traffic that we're getting. We're also looking at, what kind of leads that we're getting on a regular basis, right? There is, as much as possible, we use tools like your HubSpot, you have your Google Analytics and everything to sort of track what are the sources of the different leads that are coming from from the various channels that we use, right? But there is that little bit of traffic that shows you direct traffic, but then it all gets into your organic bit where you can also look at that, right? Like there is PR, which is, we've started a little bit of doing PR in India, in the US, and we wouldn't really know if the leads have actually directly come in from there, right? Because, big challenge that pretty much everyone faces. But that's okay, right? Like, you know that there is that jump that you see in those particular days, and you can sort of attribute it to that, and that's how we're pretty much going ahead with it.
Right. And Ashwin, just a question. Do you have something to add for that question, Ashwin? Like, how are you looking at maybe other? Like, because I remember you guys do that hashtag growth event, right? Like a lot of these physical events and all that pre-COVID. But yeah, would love to understand how are you measuring some of those things.
I think a couple of things, right? So one is you need to have a short-term lens as well as a long-term lens for that, and you need to set the right expectation within the organization as well. Not everything will result in pipeline in the next 2 months.
Right.
And I think, you know, sometimes it's better to sort of let that realization come in on their own over the course of months. And data sometimes speaks, right? You need sometimes to sort of collect the data as well and to sort of prove that, look, this is the hypothesis. So at a short-term lens, I agree with Neha, right? I mean, you have different sort of metrics to look at, right? If you do a PR and does it sort of have a spike in your website traffic? All of that stuff, right? So the way we sort of measure it is, so on the short-term lens, obviously we look at the metrics like website traffic, etc. But at the same time, for hash growth specifically, we also look at a leading metric, right? Like, for example, we have a fairly good idea of the accounts we want to win globally, right, in every region. So one metric could be, hey, are we getting the right people to sort of interact and come into the event and sort of work with us, or either in terms of a speaking capacity or in terms of an attendee. So these are some of the short-term leading metrics which sort of help you justify the costs associated with it. And of course, over the long term, it's very hard to attribute the long-term measures because attribution for these things is never an exact science. But you can still sort of show results, right? So if I've done a great job at branding and brand awareness, it should start impacting my growth numbers, right? So whether it's in terms of seeing higher brand search volume, so more people are searching for MoEngage, and we've seen that happening over the course of 6 months to 9 months. And you can start capturing those leads, and these are high intent leads, right? I mean, someone's really searching for you as a brand name and then really going through the website. Or it could even be in terms of your MQL to SQL ratio starts improving, right? Because now you're de-risking, by creating that brand awareness, you're sort of de-risking the human element in some of the downstream funnel as well, right? So a lot of these takes time and it's hard to attribute as well. But as long as you give that comfort level to the organization saying, look, there are certain short-term metrics that we can measure, and these are, it will eventually lead to, let's say, higher MQL to SQL conversion. But how much of that can be attributed to branding? I don't know, right? Because some of it can be attributed to product marketing. Some of it can be attributed to the sales rep. Maybe they are awesome, right? You don't know. So some of this, I think it becomes, that's why I said attribution is never an exact science, but right. It is useful to have a short-term and a long-term lens.
Right. So I'll probably go with one more question, and then we'll probably open it up for questions from the audience. Neha, so this was one question that I had, right? Like when you're especially passing leads to the sales teams, right? Like, I mean, for them to work on, when does your role end? When do you transfer it? Like, do you actually qualify some of them? Like, I mean, is the SDR function roll up under you, or how does that function? And also maybe one or two metrics that you are held responsible for, so that other SaaS teams can structure their marketing function accordingly.
Yeah, so initially, like you said, yes, SDR was under me. I was looking at how, the AEs and the SDRs were talking to the leads, what is the quality of the leads and everything. Eventually, we moved sales completely separately. So once the lead comes in, essentially, there is a lead scoring method in place, which basically scores your leads in different, based on different, listings that you have, objectives and things like that. And then once that is done, what is the percentage of MQLs that you're actually pushing into the sales cycle, right? And then that's when my salespeople, the AEs, come in and pick up the leads, and they start talking to the accounts. And then we also try to get back to the AEs, understand what is the quality of the leads, understand which industries are working versus which industries are not working. How can we tweak our campaigns? What is the messaging that is working? What were the main channels that actually gave you more number of leads? All of that is some, things that we look at via the AEs and also via the numbers. And once that opportunity has been created, it moves to the customer success team. And And again, it's the entire customer life cycle, right? Like we go back to the accounts and we look for referrals, all of that. So it's like we're never out of the loop.
Right. Ashwin, especially because you folks deal with a lot of, larger, at least, I wouldn't call larger organizations by employee size, but based on MAU and DAU, because More Engage does a lot of things with, activity. So how does that work for,
So I think there's no right or wrong answer to where the SDR should sit. So first of all, I think I would want to give that caveat out there. Some organizations put them under sales, some organizations put them under marketing, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both these models. In our case, the SDRs are a separate function that sits within sales, right? Now, obviously, one thing that you need to watch out when SDRs are not sort of part of the marketing organization is how do you then make marketing closer to revenue, right? How do you make them, because marketing can always say that, hey, SDRs don't report to me, so why should I take a pipeline target, right? Or why should I take a demo request target, right? Or whatever that is, right? Because when you're selling enterprise sales cycle or MQL to SQL, there has to be a human intervention. It just can't be automated, right? I mean, fine, somewhere some bluebird comes in and they'll just raise a hand and copy a demo page, but there has to be a human touch point. And if that human touch point is not sort of within the marketing organization, it becomes difficult to sort of align the marketing organization with revenue. But having said that, I think it's more of a perception problem where you say that, hey, if the SDRs are not sort of reporting to marketing, how do I make? We have done that successfully, right? Everybody, including me, everybody in marketing is sort of aligned to some sort of a pipeline goal or an influence goal. Well, may not be everybody, but at least most of them. That includes even content, right? It includes content, your performance marketing, your digital marketing, obviously your regional marketing people, your events, all of those people, right? Everybody is sort of aligned to that. And I think the perception that needs to be built in is, and that's how we are measured, coming to your question of how marketing is measured with More Engage, it's measured on pipeline contribution and pipeline value. When you do that, I think the perception needs to be built in, and the culture in the marketing team needs to be built in, saying, look, we are not just responsible for MQLs. We are not just responsible for leads, just throw leads over the fence and expect the other person to do their job. Because marketing is when done right, it can truly influence the entire funnel. And it's our job as a marketing head to sort of bring that expectation and set that expectation with the team as well. And that's what we've been trying to do, where we sort of set the expectation that, hey, even though the SDRs don't sort of report to marketing team, are they enabled in the right fashion? Are you sort of doing the right marketing campaigns which can help them move MQLs to SQLs, right? Or are you just focusing all your efforts on generating as many MQLs as possible? Which again does not lead to growth, right? Coming back to your question of why I think marketing is growth, all marketing is growth. If your marketing organization is aligned as close to revenue as possible, everybody is forced to think about, okay, how do I drive pipeline and revenue? That's just how we are structured at More Engage.
Right. So just maybe a couple of quick, more like rapid fire sort of things. Is there any resource or maybe like a book or I think books are very overrated, but any resource or something that you really recommend for people who want to know more about how they could learn growth marketing? And we do have one question coming in from Raj Praveen, but just wanted to quickly, if someone wants to learn more about marketing and growth marketing, what is like one book that
Neha, do you have any book?
There's one by Paul Graham, Startups is Equal to Growth, which is really interesting. And there's a lean startup book also, which I think is very nice.
Eric Ries, right?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Eric Ries. Okay. Ashwin, yours?
I don't really have a marketing recommendation as such.
Right.
The sort of books that I read are more non-fiction sort of a thing and not necessarily business oriented. But there have been some books which make an impact, and you can sort of relate that to what you're trying to do in marketing, right? So some of those books which has really made an impact on me is just one of these books called Born to Run. It became pretty popular, I think, in the last few years or so. There's been books written by this gentleman called Robert Cialdini. He writes a lot about psychology and persuasion and all of that. I think, if I were to sort of recommend some books, I would recommend those, right? Because what Born to Run taught me was the value of perseverance and the value of delayed gratification, and then really thinking long term, and then really sort of going back to basics and all of that. And then obviously the books by Robert Cialdini, that's persuasion, persuasion, etc. It sort of helps you put a different lens to marketing, right? Where you're so sometimes you just get too bogged down by data and numbers and Excel sheets and blah blah blah. All of that. So sometimes it's good to take a step back and really think that okay, marketing is all about perception, it's all about persuasion. So let's think through that.
Right. We have 3 to 4 more minutes, Neha. So we have one question from Abhi and Alexi around what channels have specifically worked for your business, Neha. I'm going to take that one first.
Yeah. So I think the best channel that worked for us was Google Ads. We saw a lot of good leads come in from there. Apart from that, we've done a little bit around third-party portals. So you have your Captra, your G2. SourceForge worked really, really well for us, surprisingly. Essentially because our competitors were not really there, probably, and I shouldn't be saying that right now. But yeah, that sort of worked well for us. And apart from that, social media, a little bit here and there, more around LinkedIn rather than Facebook and Twitter. Yeah.
Right. Ashwin, your.
I think that's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on two things, right? I mean, one is the customer journey itself. If you're saying that, hey, what channels are working? When you say working, what does it mean? I mean, do you mean to say that in terms of is it generating the most pipeline? In which case, it's a complicated answer because there's a lot of channels which eventually add up to pipeline.
You can talk about what are your quality leads, right? Like where do your best quality?
But even then, it's a bit different. So, for example, when we do hash growth events, right? There, obviously, the most important channel is either email, where our sales reps and our inside sales sort of reach out personally and get people in, or paid social, where we can be very targeted to the target set of accounts that we do.
Right. So
let me very top of the funnel sort of thing.
On a monthly basis, right? Because this is how businesses also look at it. What percentage of business leads come from which channels? Or not even percentage, but maybe just give top 1 or 2. I don't want to take too much for it.
So I think paid social works very well for us for driving a lot of top of the funnel awareness. For
paid social, which platforms? Because honestly,
it depends on the region. So LinkedIn works really well in India and some of the Western markets. Southeast Asian markets, surprisingly, Facebook, Insta works better. Obviously the tone and the way we sort of message, etc., this is a bit different in these. If you sort of look at more bottom of the funnel sort of a thing, I think paid search obviously works well. But then again, it works well because you've invested in a lot of branding and top of the funnel activities, right? So, sometimes people see something somewhere and they just Google and come to a landing page. So we can say paid search works.
Okay. Ashwin, if you see any higher bidding happening from any of your competitors, I'm not responsible.
Oh, don't worry. There's already a big war going on. Martech is a super competitor.
I can imagine. Yeah. So just one question around PR, right? I think we'll take it as the last question. Can you please talk briefly about the components of PR, or how are you handling PR? Right? It's a very tricky game. So Neha, do you want to start off?
I think we've just stuck to the basics as of now, right? We talk about who our partners are, we talk about who our customers are currently, or just also we're still in that awareness phase, right? Where people don't know too much about not only just Esper but also about the entire industry as such, right? What is DevOps for Android, right? And we're basically trying to create that sort of awareness, trying to educate the market about who Esper is and what we actually do and how a solution like this can actually help you when you have multiple Android devices in your business, right? And how we can actually help you with the entire life cycle of your Android applications and device management, right? So we've essentially kept it very basic.
Right. Ashwin?
We actually are not very strong in the PR game. Our PR is a combination of two things, right? So one is we try to do PR around customer wins, which I think is probably the strongest PR that you can ever do. The other PR that we do is basically around more blowing our own trumpet, right? We get placed in Gartner Magic Quadrant as a leader in Gartner Magic Quadrant. We'll do a PR. We sort of open a new office or hire a few people, and then some of the other agents will do that. So But obviously the customer win PR gets the biggest mileage ever possible. I think that just beats hands down. So if you've got customer stories, do PR, invest in PR. It makes a lot of difference. Don't worry about how do I measure it, how do I do it, and all of that. Just do it blindly.
Right. Cool. I think that brings us to the end of this session. I think we are also wrapped up on questions. I think all three of us are available on LinkedIn. Ashwin is Ashwin S. If I'm right, Ashwin. Yeah, Ashwin S. Search for Ashwin S. More Engaged. That's how I found him. And Neha is also available on LinkedIn. I'm also available on LinkedIn. Feel free to drop in the questions. And thank you so much, Ashwin. Thank you, Neha.